You're listening to Bible Truth Feed, a podcast by christadelphianvideo.org for Christadelphians and all those seeking the truth about the Bible message. Join us now as we present our latest episode.
So we just thought when we start off this evening with a Bible quote, with a Bible reading, and this one comes from Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 to 4. And it says this: "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy long life on the earth. Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord." So with that reading, just like to welcome Andrew and Naomi. Now, Andrew and Naomi are our Sunday school superintendents at Pikaranga. Naomi's a teacher, so she has a lot of experience with children. They both have, between them, they have two lovely children, children we really love. Naomi's a homeschool mother as well, and yeah, they're a really awesome couple. So, thank you for joining us. Now, what is it? Why would you want to talk about aggression in children? What is it that made you that got an interest in children and aggression?
That's a great question, Robert. I'm glad you asked. We were asked to talk about it, so that's the short answer. The slightly longer answer is because I guess we had that experience. Naomi offered for both of us. So, so I guess obviously, as people know, like, we're not psychologists. I'm a chemist, which I think is probably one step better. We're not psychologists or experts or anything like that in this field. And I guess we just want to share our experiences that we had. And I think probably part of it is kind of coming back to that reading which we just had in Ephesians chapter 6. And because we kind of thought that we just had like a bit of a naughty child, and that we just needed a bit more obedience from our son, and particularly early on. But we started to notice, particularly after in 2010 when we'd moved to Australia, and then in 2011 when Josiah started school, that we started to see things which and started to see an unprovoked aggression and attacking from Josiah, which surprised us and we hadn't expected, and kind of went beyond just being a naughty child, and that was difficult for us to understand, and so we tried to figure out what was going on, and that kind of led us along this path. So maybe, I don't know, Naomi, you want to maybe just say some things about how it started?
Yeah, I'll be giving most of the anecdotal stuff because this is what I was dealing with in the day while Andrew's at work. So
Yep.
Particularly what we had when he started school was I'd go and pick him up from school, we'd leave school fine, we'd drive home, we're fine, we hop out of the car, we're fine, and basically from the minute we hit the front door, a massive tantrum would start, and it would last for about an hour. And this would include ripping my clothing, throwing things, yelling, screaming. If I tried to get near him, I'd be hitting. And I just didn't know where this was coming from. Like it seemed like nothing had provoked this outburst of aggression, and that would last for about an hour. And we were basically getting that after school most days.
That is really where you're doing.
Yeah, just kind of out, and like to the point, and like that would then push my buttons, and I would overreact. And then I'd on a number of occasions I'd call Andrew because I was worried about my own anger, and I'd call him as my kind of stabilizing force in my life, and he would coach both of us through the phone. I'd put the phone on speaker, and Andrew would talk to me and try and calm me down, and then he'd talk to Josiah. Yeah, and that's kind of where we were.
Did you notice this behaviour just from after the time you started school, or was it sort of happening a bit even during preschool years?
During preschool years, it mainly seemed like it was disobedience. So we had major issues with putting Josiah to bed, constantly coming out. It just didn't seem like whatever we did, we could not get this child to stay in bed. We had difficulties trying to train him in any sort of behaviours and things, but we kind of put it down to just that we didn't really know what we're doing, and we needed to be more consistent, and we needed to have a better disciplinary strategy, and we just thought this was just a difficult child.
Yeah, so like in hindsight, looking back, like all of those things were actually related to the aggression which we saw come out really obviously later. But at the time, we didn't think that. We just thought, oh, he's a difficult child, and we just need to be better parents and have a better, find ourselves a better discipline regime. So it wasn't until we started to see, Josiah getting bigger and started to see these sort of tantrums and attacking that we thought this is not good for us. But we still didn't know what to do. We still thought it's probably just a discipline problem, and maybe we need to find a different discipline strategy for Josiah.
So what can you do from like looking at discipline to whatever else you've done?
Well, I guess maybe just before we get there, Robert might like to just share a story about. So I was chairman at a memorial meeting. Josiah was probably about 7 years old, and I was at the front of the hall, and I look out and I can see Naomi outside the hall. No one else in the audience can see, but I can see Naomi outside the hall mouthing to me that she's been locked out the hall by Josiah, because she's taken him outside for some discipline, and he's locked her out, and she can't get back in, and he's quite pleased. He's not about to change that. So I got up and I went out and let Naomi back in, disciplined Josiah, and then came back in. But what I didn't know about what was happening while I'd gone back in was what was happening with Naomi while she was out there with Josiah.
So we had then another whole hour, and I was holding him on my knee while he calmed down, and in that process he was trying to poke my eyes, so reaching up behind, trying to poke my eyes. He was trying to break my fingers, because my hands were obviously around him. He'd get one finger and he'd start to try and bend it in half. Someone got me a glass of water. He threw that in my face and threw the glass on the ground. Is yelling, he's screaming. Yeah. So
how old was he at that stage?
7, and we were then also starting to get phone calls from the school saying that he'd lashed out at other children, and we would have weekly conferences with the teacher at school to talk about his outbursts and reactions to other children, and that kind of brought us then through, and it was, some things were making progress. Yeah.
So I guess that was 10. So, and then we moved back to New Zealand, and we started at just the local school in Ellerslie, and that was a bit rough, but he had a major sense of not belonging, that he didn't belong at the school, and then he didn't belong with us. And by the time he got to being 10 years old, he was starting to talk about suicide, and that he just didn't feel connected or belonging as a family, and like I said, was talking about suicide. And we were still having the tantrums and the violent outbreaks, both against Naomi and Juliet, his sister, and we really didn't know what to do. And about this time, we were starting to look at homeschooling for Josiah academically, but we were also looking at, we've also been reading Dave Bailey's book on the wonder of forgiveness. And we came across a section in there, it's on page 89, just about shame, and just shame and guilt, and and that was quite powerful for us, where Dave talked about guilt coming from things that when we do something wrong, but shame comes from being something wrong, us actually being ourselves something wrong. And that was quite powerful for us, and we could actually see the way Uncle Dave described things. We could see that in Josiah. We still didn't really know what to do, but it kind of started changing how we needed to think about things. And then because we were hooking into homeschooling, we got an email advertising a seminar about understanding aggression in children by Gordon Neufeld, who's a developmental psychologist from Canadian. And so we went along to that, and there was a full day. Naomi and I both went. We went along to that, and that's really what sort of just changed things for us, and changed the way we thought about our family, our kids, and thought about aggression. And so that was really, I guess, the first turning point for us. But that's kind of how we got there.
Yeah. So I had fully realised that some of my approaches to parenting would contribute to aggression in my child. I resented my children from being born and mucking up my life. I couldn't do the things I wanted to do because of them, and they would get me up at night. And whenever I had a nice night out, they would be sure to wake up an hour after I got to, I really resented them, which is a pretty big emotion to put onto a young child. I disciplined in anger. I yelled a lot. I would lash out. But you can't go back in time and reparent your children. And in Australia, I had therapy for my issues. So I felt like I was on a journey, and I was progressing well, but I was at a loss as to how to change direction with Josiah. And that seminar on understanding frustration by Gordon Neufeld just made so much sense, and it just changed our perspective and perception of where this behavior was coming from in our child. He wasn't willfully, deliberately trying to he didn't wake up in the morning thinking, how am I going to really hurt mummy today? That this was based on something else. So yeah. And then after that, a few months later, we then did an 8-week parenting course from Gordon Neufeld.
Same person, yeah.
Yeah.
So where you said you discovered where the aggression was coming from. Where what did you find? Where was it coming from?
So what we learned was that the aggression was coming as a result of frustration. That was starting out as frustration when things just weren't working out. And when that frustration became unbearable and had nowhere to go, that it would end up in an aggressive attack, an eruption, in all sorts of ways. And I thought, actually, just in terms of explaining this, because this was really powerful in helping us to understand, just thought I might share like a little graphic with everyone.
Yeah, that'd be good.
And so you can see, and like I said, it was powerful for us.
So this stuff is Gordon Neufeld stuff. This is not what we've designed. This graphic is not what we've gone, oh, look, this would be a really good way of doing it. This is what Gordon Neufeld uses. And he goes through it much, much, much more slowly and much more in depth than what we're going to do tonight, obviously. Like, we did the 8-week parenting course of an hour a week, and we went through this and added bits to it every week. So we're just going to whiz round the roundabout.
Yeah, so he described, so he talked about, like, you get on this roundabout, like you get on this roundabout from frustration when things, because frustration, everyone gets frustrated with things when stuff's just not working for you, and you get on this roundabout, but how do you get off? And what we were finding with Josiah is that he wasn't getting off it, either change or adapt. He was getting off it, the aggression and attack. So I thought like this roundabout is quite interesting because I don't know, people, I'm sure you all know, like that famous saying about, you know, a prayer that the Lord will grant us the courage to change the things we can, the grace to accept the things that we can't, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I guess though that's kind of like the first two exits. The first exit, when things are frustrating and stuff's not working for us, the first exit in the green, that's where we try and change the circumstances. So you try and change, you know, so the computer's not working, well, make the computer work.
Or buy a new one.
Or buy a new one. You don't like your job, your job's not working out, get a new job, whatever, you know, it's that sort of, it's change the circumstances. Alternatively, if you can't change the circumstances, then you yourself can adapt and you can change. Because you yourself can adapt and change. And if you know, but if you can't do either of those things, then you can end up with some sort of outburst. But sometimes, like, and this is probably, actually, if you think about it, this is especially true for children, is that often they actually have very little control over what they can externally change. So they often run into a lot of futility. Because to be honest, like, we actually don't give our children a lot of say over things because they're actually just not ready for it. So when they want to do something and you say no, like, they're just going to run into a futility. If you'd say, you can't have that ice cream, we're not going out, I'm sorry, we're not going to do that, we're going to do this, they might plead and beg and ask. But if you're saying no, like, they're going to run into that wall of futility and they can't change things outside themselves. They can't change the circumstances. So that brings us, and then
pushes them around the
roundabout. That pushes them around the roundabout towards adaptation. Well, that's, and I'm thinking about acceptance. Do you accept the situation and adjust yourself? And that's like, there's a grieving process that goes on there, and you need some tears. It's, you know, you kind of got to be a bit sad about the fact that you can't change your environment, your situation. Yeah, you're a bit sad about that.
Quite a hard one to deal with, wouldn't it? The adapting one is probably the hardest of the change, adaptation or attack.
And it won't happen immediately. Like if you are in a job where you are not happy and you cannot change it for whatever reason, that is a major thing to adjust to. And it may take you quite a few days to be whizzing around the roundabout because you know that you shouldn't attack. So, but you're going round and round and round the roundabout, and before that futility really sinks in and you've hit like an emotional low, but then you find, and whether you've actually cried tears or not cried tears, you've felt that depth of feeling, then from there things pick up. You're off the roundabout. You've adapted. Your circumstance has changed you because you couldn't change your circumstance. So as adults, you don't necessarily have to cry tears, but you go through that emotional grieving process.
Yeah.
And I would say tears are good, but then I do lots of tears, don't I, darling?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, lots of tears. So, like, but the adaptation is transformational, like, and that's, you know, because the circumstances haven't changed, but we've changed and we've transformed. We've got a new perspective about things. The problem is that it's really difficult, and it's actually, and changing ourselves makes us feel vulnerable, because maybe, you know, it changes how we might think we appear to other people, and so that can easily be blocked. That exit it's actually the most easy one to block, because we can be blocked and defended. So this is his term, defended against vulnerability, and that prevents us from
feeling those emotions,
from having the transformational change, from accepting our situation. And that particularly comes about because of feelings of blame and shame and hurt, and especially for children. And we kind of threw a lot of this at Josiah. In hindsight, we realised we did. We threw a lot of blame and shame and hurt at him. And so he was defended. He was blocked against feeling that, prevented from feeling that, those tears, and feeling safe to change himself.
So maybe as an example, like did I have lots of tears? If when I came to Andrew with my tears to cry on his shoulder, if he went, "Oh, not again, Naomi, you are always crying," I'm then not going to go to him with my tears again, and I'm going to bottle them up, and I'm not going to release that feeling of frustration and that wall of futility that I've hit over whatever it might be, because he has shunned me and shamed me for having my tears. Andrew's never done that, so he gets all my tears. But as an example, you know, if you've told your kid to just suck it up, you know, oh, here we go again, you know, any of those sort of things, you know, help people to feel that wall of futility. And
if that happens, and they are shamed and whatever, to block that vulnerability, that will just bottle up and explode later on.
Well, as you can see roundabout, your only exit is attack.
An aggression,
Attack may not be a physical attack. An attack may be a passive aggressive shut down, go into your room, get on a device, read disappear into a book, any of that sort of avoidance.
It could be
isolation. A whole range of things.
Isolation. It could, obviously, like attacking and aggression takes all sorts of different forms in different people with different personalities and different family things. You know, whether that's a physical eruption like hitting or scratching or kicking or spitting, or verbal with abuse or swearing, or whether it's isolation and withdrawing, or victim talk or suicide talk, or manipulation and controlling, or like there's all sorts of different ways that it looks. Like it's not the same for every person. There's not sort of one answer to that.
So this is really fascinating, isn't it? Because I guess when we think aggression, we normally think the act of hitting, but actually that whole attack scenario does cover quite a lot of bases. And I know, what you're describing, we've recognised, in some of our parenting as well, which is quite horrendous to think about, the damage that we can actually place on children when we don't respond in perhaps the right ways that they need.
Yeah, so like I guess when Josiah was 7 and trying to break Naomi's fingers, like he was 7 and he's just a little weed like I was when I was 7. So it wasn't such a big, like, it's not nice, but it wasn't going to seriously hurt Naomi. But the problem was we were looking ahead and thinking that this sort of aggression and attacking, when he's 16 or 17 or 18, maybe he's still going to be a weed like me, but he's actually going to be able to do some damage. And we don't want to be in that place when he's that age.
Stuff,
I told Andrew I was going to move out. He had him. I would be out of there. But we're not in that anymore.
So the good thing is that Gordon told us, the good thing is that there's that you can actually block this exit. This is the exit you do want to block. You can block it with mixed feelings, which he explained was where you have both fear, positive and negative. You have both hits for somebody, like you feel that real anger and attack, but you also feel the love for somebody. So you feel the hug. So for children, hits and hugs, that they feel both. They've got that mixed feelings. They feel angry, but they don't act on it because they've got some hugs in there for you. And that's what we actually. So that's what we want to develop over here. That blocks that actually blocks that exit.
And then you want to unblock that to get rid of that defense against vulnerability to unblock the adaptation.
Yeah.
So that you've got that exit available.
Yeah.
So
I guess so. Just
put them on the idea is to get them on the roundabout at frustration, and well, obviously they can't do much about change because they're children. So allowing them to open up to the adaptation and blocking off the attack.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's a few things, like, I guess just want to share, because like we found this quite powerful, even though we didn't know anything else. Like, it just helped us to understand
what was going on,
what was kind of going on, and some of the things we needed to work on. But also, I guess there's a couple of other things. You can keep going around that roundabout and bottling up your feelings. Like, you don't necessarily jump off an attack the first time. And the other thing is that also it's important to remember that you, as well as trying to develop mixed feelings and develop and help your children through the transformation of tears and adapting, it is important also to have like an outlet for the attacking energy. You feel like that energy's there, and you need to have a safe outlet for that, and the kids know what it is, whatever's going to work for you and your family. So the kids know that there's a safe outlet for that. If they feel that, they can go and do whatever it is, and that's okay, and that's safe.
So have you got a couple of examples of that?
Yeah. So one time that worked really, really well for us, well, for me in the day, and I can't even remember what it was, just I was frustrated about I don't know, having to do some maths problems probably. And he was really angry about this, and he's stomping around the house going, I want to break something, I just want to smash something, but if I do the window it'll cost too much, and if I do the wall it'll put a hole in it and I'll have to fix it. And he's raging around the house, and I'm thinking, okay, I need to give him something to smash, break, whatever. And I suddenly thought, oh, ripping fabric is so therapeutic. And I raced through to my sewing cabinet and pulled out my scrap fabric, and I said, here, rip this. I'm going to rip it with you. Here, you have a piece, I'll have a piece. Let's go. And like, we ripped this fabric, and I took one rip. All gone. Done. Calm. I'll do those math now. Fine. Whatever it was. Like, but it just totally diffused, got rid of all of that aggression, that attack feeling. But obviously, you work it out. Buy a punching bag, have a big pillow that you punch, have a, I don't know,
a dartboard you throw darts at.
Yeah.
I don't know,
or do something fun.
Have
a tickle fight. Have a pillow fight. Like, actually, you can flip it and do a positive thing. Obviously, in that situation, Josiah was already expressing negative energy. But if you see frustration mounting, you might go, "It's time for a tickle fight! Whoa, love you!" And it just diffuses that feeling. It's now gone, and you can get on with whatever. Go back to the fact that we're not having ice cream, or don't go back to it, or go back to the fact that yes, actually you do need to join in with the online lesson at the moment.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
So at this point, it's not the discipline side of things that you're wanting to concentrate on, as opposed to diverting those feelings. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I guess it's about seeing that impulse to attack energy. You want that, I guess it's while you're having these strong emotions.
So I suppose part of the thing is it's also about how you see things. So one of the challenges we found is that to start with, we saw like those things as a discipline issue, like an obedience disobedience problem. Yeah. And so we were treating it like that, when what we needed to see is that actually it was a relationship issue, but that it was just that it wasn't like premeditated disobedience. It was an expression of frustration. And so we actually needed to treat it differently to the way you would deal with a child who you can see is being intentionally disobedient. So that's quite a different thing, So if a children's going to, is being intentionally disobedient in terms of, even, whether that's the way they're talking, whether that's stealing, or whether that's violence to like hitting another child, or you can tell the difference between disobedience and frustration, like when you think to look for it. And so I think it's important that we understand that that there is a difference between those things.
Okay.
And that's changed our perspective, is that we then realise that actually majority of the issues that we were having with Josiah were actually this frustration eruption, rather than a deliberate. He wasn't able to accept that mummy was not going to back down on having to do the violin practice, the math question, the going to school, the whatever. He's hit his wall of futility, because I'm not going to budge. You've still got to do this thing. He's hit that wall of futility, and he was defended against me because of all the shame, the hurt and the blame that I'd thrown at him. So that second exit was not an option for Josiah. So he only had, when the frustration was too big, the only option he had was to attack. And because I was the source of the frustration most of the time, he would attack me. Yeah. So that's the difference. Maybe it's worth saying at this stage that when for a person who's in an emotionally safe environment, this roundabout and the getting off at adaptation works. And for families that have that safe place, they don't have defended children, and their children have developed mixed feelings because they've actually got some hugs in them for you, then when you discipline them and you say no, and they still reach out and take the cookie and you give them a smack on the hand, that works. The disciplinary process works because they are, because the adaptation is open and the relationship is good, so that they can adapt and they don't have to attack.
So what we realised that actually we've been doing something wrong is, and this helped us, is that underlying this was a question about a relationship and a connection between us and our kids, us and our children, and that's actually, that relationship and connection was where we'd been falling over, because I guess this is one of the things, like a little bit like a tree, we kind of looked at other families and thought and gone, man, they're doing really well. Like they look, their family looks like it runs really smoothly. Why they don't get those sort of behaviours? What are we doing wrong that that they're doing right? And so we look at those things.
We should do what they're doing.
We should copy them and do what they're doing. And we're looking at what you can see, but what we couldn't see was all the roots under the ground, the stuff that's unseen, the relationship and connection between the parents and the children that enabled all the things that we could see above the ground to work. And so just copying what we could see wasn't actually giving us the outcomes we wanted. And this is, going through doing this course and seeing those things opened our eyes to seeing that actually the problem was our relationship with our children, and that's what we needed to fix to enable our children to learn how to go around the roundabout properly,
how to be obedient, how to
and actually that was something we needed to do.
What we'd like to do is, if we can, if you're happy with us, to carry on with this next time. But just in the meantime, one last question before we go to some open discussion. What can you tell us about a defining moment or two where you saw change in what you've done? I mean, what I'd like to do is perhaps talk about the relationship side of it next time, and develop that so that we can grow families closer together, or children and parents or whatever. But in the meantime, what results did you see? I mean, so far what we've seen of Josiah is someone who's lashing out, who's stuck on that roundabout, either stuck there or taking the aggression exit, who's trying to break your fingers, who's throwing glasses of water, ripping up material, But what sort of changes did you see? Did you have a defining moment?
After the seminar, that changed our perspective, but I can remember going back through the notes weeks and months later going, but what am I supposed to do? And it wasn't until we did the 8-week course that we really saw major change, and we saw them relatively quickly. It was a lot of work, it was pretty intense, but it was been a few weeks. But using the roundabout as an example, I'll share a story that demonstrates that really well. Some of the neighbourhood kids were over, and Josiah was mistreating one of them, talking disrespectfully, or was reaching out to pull a pigtail or something. I don't remember. I overreacted and reached out and smacked his hand. So totally, I get it. I overreacted. That then triggered a huge amount of frustration for my child, for my son. I pulled him into the bedroom, shut the door, said to Juliet, you go and play with the kids, like, I'll deal with this. We're standing there in the bedroom. Josiah lifts his fist to go and punch me, and then he put it down and released his fist, and he didn't go ahead and punch me. Even though I had overstepped the bounds, I had mismanaged, but I was just rejoicing because he had blocked his own aggressive attack of his own will and his mixed feelings. So obviously that was after we'd done a lot of work on the relationship. He had those mixed feelings. He could feel the hits for me, definitely, because that fist came up, but he could feel the hugs he had for me, and he didn't want to hurt me. And I was just inside, just whoop, 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 celebrate, yeah. I didn't do that, but
it's a real wow moment.
It's just a real wow. And now, I mean, it's been years and years since he has. I've even felt like he wanted to attack me, and we still get frustration, but we're definitely not. We're not getting the attacks. So that was
to get off on the adaptation part of pathway now, much easier.
Yeah, much more. It's a lot. It's still quite hard work still.
Yeah, it's still quite hard work.
He's a very sensitive child. So the more sensitive your person is, the more quickly they're gonna defend against vulnerability. And some people just are more sensitive than others, and so that wall goes up around their heart much quicker and much stronger and much thicker. But we have managed to soften that heart in Josiah.
And also, because if you don't ever have that, if you just grow up, all connected, then you don't have like a feeling in the back of your mind that maybe this is not going to last. If you know what I mean, that that there's already like a habit or concern from he probably couldn't even define from his childhood, that has a question about is it really safe to adapt? Is it really and that just takes time to work through, and as we develop our relationship and make that emotionally safe. So
he does say to me now, Mummy, you can just leave it alone. Stop talking to me about how I feel and my emotions. Just like let it go. And I'm like, okay, all right, sorry, darling. All right, I'll give you some space. Are you sure, darling? Are you sure you didn't feel really embarrassed? I would feel really embarrassed.
Well, it sounds like you've had a really amazing journey with this. And yes, we would love to keep talking about this next week and further discuss how you built that relationship and how you managed to get that softening of the heart, and and some of those takeaway tips that we can all practice, and not only with children but just in our relationships amongst people in everyday life, because all these scenarios work with all our relationships, not just with parent-child. It's just interpersonal relationships that it all applies to. So yeah, really fantastic stuff.
Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing with us. And especially since you really, in a way, you're sharing that really vulnerable part of life, the part that no one else ever puts up on Facebook. So we all look at each other. We all look at our Facebook lives, those perfect pictures, those smiling families, but we don't often get to see in the real picture. So we really, really appreciate that. So thank you so much. And we all have that real picture.
Yeah, some of the people obviously in our memorial meetings when we had young children have witnessed what we were going through.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I will say also that I've seen like some of the names on the of families on the go-to meeting, and I know that some of those families have got children that our son was aggressive and actually attacked, like did things to hurt their children. So there's definitely.
So there are families out there who do know.
Yeah, they know what that would be.
Yeah, but thank you very much. Anyway, next week we are going to change the time. This is actually going to clash with our sisters class, which will be 7:30 on Wednesday. So from now on, we have planned to change the time and day of Family Matters. So from next week on, we'll be looking at Monday evening at 7:30. So that's from now on, it'll be Monday evenings at 7:30 p.m. if you wanted to catch Family Matters. Now, Andrew and Noxx have just put up a link that you might be interested in looking at. It's called A New Field on YouTube. And yeah, there's a link up there that you can have a look at. Also, I put up a little note there that says if you want to get an email about Family Matters, to remind you that it's on and what the subject is, and we'll, as we work through a plan, we'll let you know what's coming up in the next few weeks. Just send me an email.
That second link. Search Gordon Neufeld on YouTube. Then there's the Gordon Neufeld Institute. But then that third link is for HeartSync, which is an Auckland parent coach who's Neufeld trained, and she offers parent coaching via Skype or whatever. And she also publishes a blog and publishes in magazines and does trips around the country speaking and stuff. So getting onto her, if you're wanting extra support from a local person rather than in Canada and Canada time, then Adrian at HeartSync is really wonderful. We've had a lot to do with her, and yeah, she's really good.
That'd be really helpful. Yeah. Now for next week as well, if you have any scenarios or questions you would like Andrew and Noxx to talk about, or to have a think about in their presentation next week, do feel free to either email them to me or to Andrew and Naomi if you've got their address, and they can do what they can. I'm just going to put it out now. And they'll do what they can to answer those questions. So if you have an aggressive child and you're going, well, what about this situation where, we're all going swimming and he's trying to drown everyone? How do I react to that? Do I work with the drowning child, or do I work with the one or the drownee? Yeah. They'll be able to help you with that, and it'll be really useful for them to have some examples to work through. Also, just one other thing, if you're wanting to listen to past recordings, you can find them on the Pickering of Christadelphian website, which is a Google site. I'll put the link up, and you can listen to, this one in a little while, and the other Family Matters, and a lot of other recordings as well. Welcome to Family Matters, and our topic tonight is aggression in children, and we're looking at this is part 2.
So last week, thank you for sharing with us. You shared a lot of your own life experiences and how you were dealing with aggression within your own family, and how much stress that was placing on the family group, and then insights that you received from attending Gordon Newfeld's course, and how that's been so really life-changing. And we really found it so fascinating, the roundabout that you described, the roundabout that had exit of change, or exit of adjustment, or exit of attack. And yeah, it was absolutely fascinating. And all these insights are just so applicable, not just to dealing with children, but dealing with adults and, you know, people of all ages and stages, really. So that's really, really applicable material for everything in our lives. So thank you for that. So moving on to tonight.
Tonight what we're going to be looking at is going from taking that aggressive nature in the child and how we can work with it and how we can change to be able to change that aggressive nature into more of a, I suppose, pliable child. Would that be the word?
Yeah.
A nicer child.
Softening of the heart.
Softening of the heart. And there's a really neat reading in Ezekiel chapter 11, verses 19 and 20, which is talking about Israel, but it's also really appropriate for our children, our spouses, anyone who needs their heart softening. It says this, Ezekiel 11, verse 19, I will give them an undivided heart and put a new spirit in them. I will remove from them their heart of stone and give them a heart of flesh. Then they will follow my decrees and be careful to keep my laws. They will be my people, and I will be their God. So, yeah, last week we learned what an aggressive child looks like. So, and you mentioned about them having hard hearts. So what do we do now to soften their hearts? What do we need to do to build that attachment you talked about? And what does that attachment look like? What should we see in them if they're properly attached to us?
Well, I think
lots of questions.
Yeah, there's lots there. Yeah, you got lots in there, Robert. So that's really like teed us off nicely for the rest of the evening.
Yeah, sure. We'll just go to sleep now.
Yeah. I think before we get into some of those details, I think there's just a couple of really kind of good things to notice about those verses that you talked about in Ezekiel. And the first thing to notice is that the outcome that God's talking about. He's talking about that when they've done that, then they're going to walk in his ways and keep his statutes after their heart's been changed from a hard heart to a soft heart. And that's going to require a new spirit. And so, God's looking for that outcome in Israel. And that's also what we want to be like with God. We want to walk in his ways as well. And to do that, we need to have soft hearts and not hard hearts. And so that's really good because it also describes what we're looking for with our kids. If we want them to be willing to do things our way and follow our guidance and instruction, to recognise us as the leader and security and guide for their lives, which we as parents are and should be, then we need to soften their heart. If they've got a hard heart, we need to find a way to soften that. And if you just think about that, if you just go back to that roundabout we talked about, there's, on the adjustment or the changing us exit, we saw that can be blocked by the hard heart. A hard heart blocks off that ability to change. So we need to soften. We want to soften our children's heart in order to enable the relationship and enable that for themselves to adjust and change, find their tears. But the other thing that this does is also changing the heart. It also builds up the blockage or the barrier for attack by building up the mixed feelings, for the people that we're attached to. So changing the heart and developing the relationship actually does both those things. And I think that's really what we want to, that's really what we want to talk about tonight. Is about how we can develop that relationship, what that kind of looks like, and some things for that. And that's, I guess, just sort of leading into that. That's kind of how it fits in. Connects the two nights.
And also in that verse, it's God who's doing the acting. He's on the front foot. He's the proactive one. He's the one changing the heart. So we as the adults need to be the proactive one, the parents. We are the proactive, just as God, our Father, has our relationship in His care. We as the parents, we need to be the ones who are looking after and nurturing this relationship. Yeah. So maybe we just want to define terms. What we mean by attachment label.
So what do you mean by attachment? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I guess most people have heard of attachment parenting, kind of not really talking about that. But I guess, I don't know, we got told this, so we took it as true, that attachment is basically the scientific word for love. So we're talking about that sort of emotional connection and kind of breaking down what that means. And in particular, when we're talking about attachment, we're not so much talking about our attachment or our love for our children. We're talking about developing their attachment and love for us. Just like God's developing the attachment of Israel to Him, it's not a question about His love for them, but about developing their attachment to Him. We're wanting to develop the attachment of our children to us. And in doing so, our attachment to them will grow as well. We want to develop that attachment. It's not how much we love them, it's about how much they're attached to us. And part of doing that means that we're looking to help them to be dependent on us, for us to be the leaders and guiders in their life, to be on the front foot, to be in the driving seat or the alpha role, because God has given parents we've got a God-given authority, which is a role and responsibility, and that God-given authority is an authority for us to care for our children, because our children are borrowed. They're on loan from God, but He's given us, while we're looking after them, He's given us an authority over them to care for them, not for other things, but an authority to care. That's what we need to do.
Not to dominate, which is what I was really good at. I'm good at controlling, I'm good at dominating. Boom, boom, boom. And that actually kills attachment. So that was a big thing for me, is that we're given this authority to be the carer, to provide for the needs. So when you think
just as God said about Israel, I brought you up on eagle's wings, and it was a very gentle, it wasn't I took you out with a whip and a whistle, whatever. But I brought you out on eagle's wings. I carried you.
Exactly. And in like a hen gathering, he's going to gather Jerusalem, and it's very gentle. So you mentioned, what does it look like when our child is attached to us, or someone is attached to us? Because you can see this generally in your relationship. Well, I see it in my relationship with my spouse. So when a child is attached to their parent, they will look to the parent for guidance. They will seek advice and then listen to that advice. They will share their secrets and open up their innermost thoughts, desires, hurts, feelings, etc., dreams, thing. Then they're also motivated by wanting to do good for that person. And also then when they are hurt, they turn to that person for comfort. So all humans seek attachment, and a child will look for attachment wherever they can find it. That may, if the parents are not a safe place for their heart, they will seek it elsewhere. So the dog, the family pet, the uncle or the aunt, an older sibling, grandparent. But you've got to have a match of that role and the responsibility. The dog, sure, it can be attached to the dog, but it's not going to guide you and give you advice. It's not going to protect you. It's not, you know, it hasn't actually got the ability to be a parent. The uncle may not have the inclination to be a parent to this child, but this child is going to follow this uncle. So if this uncle does, I don't know, whatever, drugs, then toodle off, so's the young child. So they're going to be looking for this bonding, and they're going to find it. And we as parents need to make sure that that attachment is to us, because the attachment actually gives us the power to parent. When your child wants to do what you say, when your child wants to do good by you, when your child looks to you for guidance and they've got that pull, then you have the power to influence them, because what you say, they're going to fully take that on board. You know, I think I illustrate it in the spouse thing, is that if Andrew doesn't think that this skirt top combination is working, then I ditch it. My girlfriends might all say it looks fine, but I'm more attached to him than I am to them, so his opinion means a whole lot more than them. So that's kind of a very clear, simple, funny way of showing attachment. And you know, you'll probably recognize it in yourself, that the person that you really listen to will be the person that you are really attached to. And that's obviously what we want on our children. We want our children to go, yeah, sure, I'll go to bed all quiet and calm for you, mummy, because I love to please you.
Sounds like every parent's dream. So how do we get there?
So that's right. So it is like a dream, or I guess an ideal, or I suppose one of the things to remember is that relationships are not static. You never arrive and go, you know, we've arrived. There's nothing else to do. Like we've reached the destination. Like that, we all know that doesn't. So, you know, building attachment is building the relationship, and that is
ongoing.
And that's ongoing for our entire lives, the entire life of that relationship. So that's for, you know, right from infants right through to adult children who have left home. Like that, you know, that putting into that relationship never stops. And there's never a time where you go, you know, I don't have to do any more, put any more effort in, you know, it's all good.
But there are times when you sit there and go, this is so lovely. Like,
there's definitely times where it's better than others. So,
it still takes my heart when Josiah says, what were you wanting us to be doing, mummy? Oh, our handwriting. Yes, I'll get my handwriting out. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, like, this is so weird. Like, wonderful.
That's great.
So I guess
you get children like that.
So I suppose, you know, that's what attachment looks like. So that's where we're wanting to get, and we're wanting to have all those benefits. I guess,
and that's really the dream of every parent.
It is. That's what we want.
And for those of you who are new and just hearing this tonight, and you didn't listen to last week's recording, believe you me, what I just said was not happening 3 years ago. We were in a horrible bad space. So just
you can
before you think we're this idyllically calm and loving family.
You need to listen to last week's before listening to this week. So I think one of the good ways, like I know we found to think about it, which Gordon describes in terms of like understanding attachment and how it works, is like the tree. We talked about this last week as well, that what you see is you see the beautiful trunk and the leaves and the branches, and you see all the beautiful above ground stuff. That's what you see when you look at other people's families. You see from the outside, and it all looks wonderful, and you've probably got no idea because it's not your life. But what we're talking about now is we're talking about the roots that are underground. What holds that tree up? And that's attachment here. And there are a set of roots that we need to actively cultivate as parents, and that we can work through in order to grow attachment, enable to support a strong relationship.
Yeah.
So those are the stages of attachment. Did you want to?
Oh, okay, yeah. So Gordon talks about 6 stages. So you can kind of think, if you've got ground level, each root is coming down, and each one is slightly deeper and therefore more grounding and more effective.
Can we just clarify, who's Gordon? Gordon?
Oh, so Gordon Neufeld.
For those
Dr.
who
Gordon
weren't here last week,
Neufeld.
can you just explain who Gordon is?
Yeah, let's. So Dr. Gordon Neufeld is a developmental psychologist, and we went to a whole day seminar when he was out in Auckland 3.5 years ago on a whole day on understanding aggression in children. And then that totally changed our perspective and opened our eyes and our understanding as to where this behaviour in our son was coming from. And then we followed up with one of his 8-week parenting courses called Power to Parent. And that's where he really outlined in a lot of detail this attachment for children. So we're giving it to you in a nutshell. But website, and he's on YouTube, and he's written a book, Hold On to Your Kids. So yeah, we can put links in the chat during discussion for those who need them from who missed last week.
That would be good. Thank you.
So Gordon says there's 6 stages of attachment. The first being the senses, so being in proximity, so being in sight, in touch, in smell, in taste, in hearing of the person that you're trying to get an attachment with. So obviously new couples are always wanting to be together and always touching each other and but also when your baby's born, they're carried a lot. You're feeding them in your arms, whether that's breast or bottle. You're holding them while you're feeding them. You're cuddling them. You're comforting them. You're carrying them everywhere. So much proximity, close proximity. And then you move into sameness. So sameness is imitating or copying, being the same as. So developmentally, once your child is sort of starting to toddle around, they are going to be like mummy. They're going to have their bowl and their wooden spoon while mummy's cooking. They're going to have their plastic lawnmower and be going around the lawns after daddy on the big lawnmower. They're going to be got Teddy changing Teddy's nappy while mummy's changing the sibling's nappy, and all of that mimicking, imitating, copying stuff, being the same as. Then a bit deeper is belonging and loyalty, which is possessive. You belong to me, I belong to you. My mummy makes the best cooking. My daddy's the strongest. No, don't you say that my mummy is whatever, to another kid or something. It's that sort of belonging thing. Yeah. So those are kind of the first 3, and they only go so far deep. And then you have significance, which is being of value or being of importance. So obviously we can see our role is you've got to take that, you've got to give that value, and so that they feel that they have a significant contribution and a significance.
They've got a significance. So it's being interested in what they have to contribute, to say, to do, because they want to know that not just that their contribution is significant, they want to know that they are significant to you. So that's when they feel really, really important, because you gave them the salt and the pepper to carry all the way over to the table and put on the middle of the table. They were contributing, and mummy trusted me with the salt and the pepper shaker. Or
you dry the dishes, before they got sick of doing it and things like that.
Yeah. They got to help sort out the socks and match them into pairs and all of that sort of thing. And then the 5th one is love. So this is your strong feeling. This is the giving of the heart. This is declarations of love. This is love notes. This is love songs. This is drawing hearts on everything. This is what we never got. We do now, though. Lots of I love you. I just love you. And it's just so nice. Oh yeah, and the sixth one is psychological intimacy. There's that for a psychological term.
Yeah.
Psychological intimacy, which is that opening up, the sharing of the heart.
It's being known. That
yeah,
it's the knowing, the genuine knowing.
Mm.
You know, that I know this, that we know each other. You know, we know each other's secrets. We know who each other really are.
Yeah.
You know, it's that kind of intimate,
yeah.
intellectual connection.
Yeah.
You know that you feel like somebody really knows who you are, not just maybe who you appear to be. And that's the deepest level of attachment and connection.
So much more
so
than
those are
just talking about the weather.
Oh yes, much more than that. So those are the six. So sameness, so senses, number one.
Senses,
sameness number two. Loyalty and belonging, number three. Significance, number four. Love, number five. And psychological intimacy, number six. You can look it up online. I've only got five on each hand, so you can look those up online. You know. Yeah. So I guess one of the important things about that actually is that they do happen in that order. They naturally happen in that order for children. So if you never read a book or whatever, and you were not parents like us, but you loved your children and cared for them from day dot, this would probably all happen for you without too much difficulty, and to happen in that
6 years or so.
In about 6 or 7 years would happen like that, in that sort of natural developmental progressive order. But number one happens before number six. If you try and get things out of order, then you will end up with problems.
So you've got to be close before you can share secrets.
Yes.
Yeah, you've got to have that base, because then you've built that safety and that trust. If you're going to open up your heart, you need to know that you're going to be safe with that amount of vulnerability.
Yeah.
So if you have, like I did, raised your child with blame, shame, and hurt, you don't get hearts. You do not, because it is not a safe place for a heart. In fact, I'm going to build a big brick wall around my heart, because out there it's too painful. Yeah.
But the good thing is that if you do go back to the beginning, if you go back to number one, however old your child is, if you go back to number one, you can start again.
Which is being in close proximity.
Yeah, which is being in close proximity. You can start again, and you can rebuild that relationship, and you can do that at whatever age. That doesn't just have to be like, there's no age where you go, you know what, it's too late. You can go back at any time and start. Obviously, the older the child is, the more challenging it is, because you're not starting from a clean slate anymore.
Especially if they've already left home. That's kind of tricky.
But
You
just need to be a bit more creative about it.
Yep.
But you go back and you start again at number one, and you find ways to be in proximity to reduce the separation between you, and then you naturally work your way through. And that happens you'll know as you go through, because that will naturally occur, and you'll sense how that's progressing.
And you'll see
as long
the
as you
signs.
know what you're looking for.
Yeah, and you'll see the signs. So so we see the signs in Josiah for sameness. So we've done a lot of proximity stuff, a huge amount. Obviously, homeschooling was a big part of that, because we're in each other's space 24/7. And in those early days, we weren't doing swimming lessons or music lessons or anything that took us apart, anyone doing anything. So, but you don't have to homeschool in order to get proximity. So we did a lot of proximity, and then we started to see the development of the other things. So particularly what's really clear is that you ask Josiah about climate change, and you will get exactly what Andrew believes about climate change. So obviously, because we're dealing with an older child, the sameness is a bit more complex. It's not a wooden spoon in a bowl like mummy, or pushing the plastic lawnmower. It's adopting daddy's view on a big issue like climate change. So you'll start to see those things, and you can just wrap them up in your heart and just hold on to those little gems of connection, and enjoy them. So
can you talk us through how you achieved some of these things? You know, how you set out on this track towards attachment, and you know, what was the process you worked through, and how long did it take to see the changes?
Okay, so a couple of things. It was intense. And the first thing that we did, and that I particularly did, was to remove all the shame, the blame, and the hurt as much as possible. Obviously, you still get frustrated, you still get angry, you still overreact or react in the wrong way or manage something wrong. You're not going to do it perfect every time, but to be striving for having no shame, no blame, and no hurt. And I naturally look for something to throw blame at when anything goes wrong in my life, whether it's finding the car keys or burnt something or whatever.
But there are some things, there are some things that we went through, which we were told, which actually really helped us quite a bit. And the first was that most of the thing that we actually had to work on was around the proximity thing, and also about reducing the separation. So when you're out of proximity, you become separated, about finding ways to reduce that so that you could maintain a connection. That was one thing. We'll talk a little bit more about that soon. And the other thing was that to give ourselves space and time to make decisions. So, you know, like our kids come to us with, with questions or problems or situations. Can I do this? I want this. And it's easy to feel pressured into that you have to make a complex decision in an instant. You know, can I go and play there? Can I go and we feel pressured to make a decision quickly, and then we start making inconsistent decisions, or or maybe we start snapping at children because we feel pressured, and we're going through that sort of frustration roundabout. And so one thing that Gordon said about that is that's about finding ways to give yourself time. So, and part of that is talking to children and say, I need to discuss that. I need to discuss that with mum or with dad. I need or let me come back to you in whenever, and also giving yourself some time to make a decision so you can think it through. I need to think about that. Can I get back to you on that? Obviously, you need to follow up and actually get back to them. But finding ways to give yourself time to calm down and to feel more orderly about making that decision. So it was very important. And then, like I said, about finding ways to maintain the connection and reduce the separation. For example, there's a few things about reducing separation. So when if you've got a child going to school, then dropping the child off at school is you're going to have a whole day where you're going to be separated from each other, a whole school day. So you can make that easier by doing two things. The first thing is talking to the child about the next connection that you're going to have. So you're bridging over the separation. You're talking about the next connection you're going to have when you pick them up, what you're going to do, when you're going to be back together again. That's one thing. And then the other thing is also finding something that they can take with them. If something of yours. If the separation is too much and they're really resistant to letting go of you, then obviously you can think about, do I need this separation? It's obviously one thing, but maybe that's not a choice. Maybe that separation has to happen. Then you can think about, okay, what can I give them of me that they can take a little bit of me with them?
So it might be the jumper you're wearing. You go, you know what? I've kind of been wearing it all morning. It's starting to smell like me. Here, you can take that and wear it for the day. Obviously, if they've got a school uniform, It may be a photograph in their reading folder. It may be a little note from you in their lunchbox. It may be something that's got a photo in it, like a locket or a bracelet, or something that's got a photo of you and them in it together, or a photo they can put on their desk. I guess it depends whether you're getting like major aggression at school, in which case the school are going to be on board with anything you implement, because they're trying to deal with this child. So if having a photo of you on their desk works, or laminated onto their drink bottle, or something, so that they've got a little bit of a connection there with you. They've got something of you to hold on to when they cannot hold on to you. So an example of this was...
I was just going to say, you had an interesting example when, Andrew, you went to Vietnam.
Yeah, so during the course of this 8-week parenting course, Andrew went to Vietnam for a week. And
2 weeks.
Or 2 weeks? Yeah, something. Anyway, not great when you're trying to develop attachment to have a parent disappear off a week or two. So Josiah's behaviour was off all day. He was really unsettled, and just
the day I was leaving.
The day Andrew was leaving, like Andrew was leaving on the midnight flight. So Josiah was going to be going to bed, going to sleep, waking up the next day, and Daddy would not be there for the rest of the week. And I suddenly clicked, I think this might be, we've done all this work on attachment, and now he's faced with a major separation, and this is causing anxiety. And I eventually got him to have his tears and burst into tears and acknowledge that, yes, this was the issue. And his words were, I've just realised how much I love my daddy, and now he's going away.
Oh, no.
So then what we did was we got one of Andrew's t-shirts and we gave that to Josiah, and Josiah wore it the whole week. He wore it all day and put it on over his pajamas at night, and he did not take it off. The sleeves are way down here, and it was just about hanging down to the knee. He did not part with that t-shirt at all. So we've done a lot of that over the time. Even just the other night, I had a very clingy child, and I went, would you like my cardigan? Oh, yes, please. Oh, you snuggled into bed. Oh, good night, darling. Bye. Stuck that one in the wash this morning. So that reducing that separation and giving them something of yours to hold to is a key one. The other really powerful and simply easy tool, tactic, strategy that Gordon talks about is collecting. So this is, no, it's gone, good. He talks about collecting the eyes, the nod, and the smile. Now, I want you all to think about when you go out the street and you see your neighbour across the fence, and you open your eyes, you generally raise your eyebrows or widen your eyes in some way, you smile, and you will say something like, nice day, or you're off to work too, or something like that, to get a nod from them. And we just naturally do that. When you're the doorman at the ecclesial hall, you shake hands, you smile, you open your eyes, you nod, and you start some sort of conversation where you're going to get a positive affirmation back. Yep. I don't know, something about the weather generally, because you're just seeking that very quick connection. So we actually do this naturally, but we actually forget to do it with our kids because we're tearing around the house. We don't make eye contact. We don't stop to talk to them. We just, can you make sure you've got your shoes and get your lunchbox in your bag and your drink bottle and meet me in the car in 5 minutes, and don't forget you've got music lesson today and you have got sports and da-da-da-da-da. We're just firing all these instructions out, and we forget to actually connect. So collecting the eyes, the nod, and the smile. He says collect more times in the day than you direct. Collect before you direct. Don't just direct. Yeah. And he says, and if you have trouble collecting the eyes, work on your relationship. Because as soon as there's a relationship issue, the eyes will go. sometimes you can't collect the eyes. Like if someone's driving, you can't collect their eyes because obviously as an adult now, we're talking about the kids driving.
Not a good idea, no.
But the child might be watching TV or playing a computer game, or they're knitting or something that needs their eyes on it. They're reading their book. So collect the ears and then the nod and the smile. So you're seeking an invitation into their world, and you're coming alongside in a really friendly manner. So for example, if you've got a teenager who just goes to their room and plays on their device all evening and you can't get them, Adrienne Woods, so that's an Auckland-based Gordon Neufeld trained parent coach. We'll put her link in the chat as well. We attended one of her seminars, and she gave this story of a father whose son would just go into his room and play on a computer all evening. And the father was just like, I need to connect with my son. So he went in and he just sat next to his son for 20 minutes and just watched him play his computer game. And then he left. And the next evening he went in for 20 minutes and he just sat and he just watched. And he just very gently came into that child's space, and eventually they got to the point where they were playing together, they were talking about the game, and then eventually what happened was the child wasn't in his room when dad got home from work. He would come out and meet dad, they could go for walks, and it just kind of grew from there. But very, very gently, I guess it depends where your child is in age and stage development and their attachment, but you're looking to gently come alongside and collect those eyes or ears, the nod and the smile.
So that really sounds like you're sort of moving, you're working towards what they're interested in, moving into their world to try and draw them back out into your world, as it were. Rather than trying to extract them from what they're interested in, you have to sort of be alongside them so that eventually they see you as someone that they want to be attached to and have part of their life.
And you're just making, and that you keep it safe. So you're not going, you really should be getting off that computer and spending time with me because we're important and our relationship's important. Oh my goodness, that's not going to go down great.
No.
So that I'm conscious of is that when I come out of bed and I'm heading down to the bathroom, that instead of sticking my head into the kids' room, because they both share at the moment, and going, hey, we need to be getting up and you're on cooking breakfast tonight and I want you to vacuum the hallway and make sure you've stripped the bed linen off your bed and I make sure that actually what I've done is I've collected those eyes or ears, depending if the eyes are open, the smile. So generally something like, good morning, did you sleep well? You look like you slept well, Josiah. Juliet has not got her eyes open. I go, oh, you look snugly in your bed, and she'll nod and she'll smile. I've got her. And then I go to the bathroom and do my stuff, and I come back, collect again, and then say, it's time to get up now. So, so it's actually really powerful, but it just sounds so simple. And we actually do it naturally with our children. At least
and this is so important on all levels, isn't it? Not just the children, but in all relationships.
In fact, everything you've said today, I can relate to a marriage or an older parents and child relationship, or even if you're trying to build a relationship with your parents, you can do the same sort of things, which is really cool.
And if you
have
eyes, there's a relationship issue.
And I really love the point you made before, right at the beginning, where you said this is something that we as parents need to be proactive on. Because, if you're not proactive, you will just lean into your kid's bedroom and you will just go, time to get up, time to, brush your teeth because we're going to be out the door in 5 minutes. Without collecting, you've actually got to make that effort. And you've got to be proactive about it.
Yeah, be the alpha. You're responsible for this relationship. So it's And then once you've collected, you still need to keep all that hurt, shame, and blame out of the, So that was one really good thing. And then Andrew mentioned before about bridging over the separation. There can be anything that comes into the relationship that divides. So that's obviously physical separation, but it can also be discipline or punishment. It can actually be anger and frustration from either party. That divides the relationship. It could be shortcomings and failures, like your child has let you down. There's trust broken, but you want to bridge over any of those things. I'll talk a bit more about that.
Yeah. So just before we turn over to any further questions or discussion, can you just tell us a little bit about alpha parenting?
Well, that is definitely a whole nother discussion. Actually, Adrienne Woods is that's kind of her main area of interest, is the alpha child. So obviously, all children are different, and some have different tendencies. One of the things that we found is that taking responsibility for the relationship with our children meant that we needed to be on the front foot, and actually find a lot of problems are no longer problems if you're proactive and on the front foot about them, which we weren't particularly. But what we had found is that our son, particularly Josiah, is that he had got into the habit of taking the lead on things because we weren't, and that created a challenge for us to be the alpha because we would find that he would already have made a whole bunch of decisions about things before we'd even got in the door, and so we were thinking, oh, we're supposed to be on the front foot and taking charge of this relationship, but I'm actually just following my son's direction. This is actually not the way it's supposed to work. He's actually supposed to be following mine. How do we change this? How do we change this dynamic? And so there are a couple of things that we need to do. Firstly, actually, I needed for myself, particularly when I was coming home from work, is I needed to already know before I stepped through that door. I needed to be basically saying what I was going to do with Josiah as soon as I stepped through the door, so it didn't have a chance. Because once you're on the back foot, it's really hard. So yeah. I needed to, and then the same, and we needed to try and create that space. The other thing is sometimes you do find yourself on the back foot. Like Naomi's got a story about playing Monopoly with Josiah, and Naomi's been doing something, and Josiah wanted to play Monopoly, and Naomi had kind of given a sort of passive agreement, and Josiah had then gone on, you're going to be red and I'm going to be blue, and we're going to play with the computer rules because it goes faster, and he'd made all the arrangements, and Naomi's like, hang on, like what's
how do I get this?
What's going on here? And then she says, Andrew, I need to talk to you. So we went down to the bedroom, and Naomi's like, how do I get back in the driving seat on this? Like I'm on the back foot. I've not made any decisions. He's decided everything.
I am happy to play Monopoly with him.
Yeah, I'm happy to play Monopoly, but like how do I? And one of the things that Gordon said, which helped with that, is you don't have to always be forcing yourself to be the boss. If you've got a yes in you, so like the child suggested something, I want to do this, I want to go for a walk, I want to play Monopoly, I want to do this. If you've got a yes in you for that, then make it a real yes. Like not a passive go along, like a yes. Yes, let's do that. We're going to play Monopoly. Yes, we're going to play Monopoly. We're going to play it. We're going to do this and we're going to do that. And you're giving like your overt parental authority to that and approval. You're giving your approval, so you're putting yourself back into that alpha position that you're sanctioning their decisions.
So your alpha child will be the real responsible one, the one who has it all sorted until they don't. And then all of a sudden you go, what? They're in tears. Like, so they're the one that goes, oh, Mum, I've already put the rice on for dinner. Like we've stayed with friends and we've kind of looked, gone, oh, yeah, this is a real alpha child. She's like, Mum, you give me the keys and I'll get a taxi home and I'll get lunch started. This is after the meeting, So like Walter, she's 11, and you're going, wow, okay. Mum's like, yeah, that'd be great, thanks, darling. You know, just hand over the house keys, get a taxi, go home, start getting lunch sorted. Like, that's your alpha child. Your alpha child is calling the shots, is super responsible, independent, but you want to create dependency. In that parent relationship, you can't be sharing the alpha role. The parent has alpha and the child has to be dependent. That's like us and God. Every time we think we can be God, doesn't usually go very well.
No.
We need to realise our dependence on Him. So so that sort of thing. So that's kind of the area that Adrian's really quite keen on.
Very, and it's a big topic.
But if you've got a child, if you've got a child like that, like an alpha child, then there's some different things for kind of specific for that.
For develop. So another tip. So one was, if you've got a yes in you for your child, make it a real yes, like a really enthusiastic yes. You don't have to have a yes. You can say no and help them have their tears and deal with that wall of futility around about. But if you've got a yes, really yes it. The other thing is, I've just completely forgotten. Create dependency. When they give you an opportunity to be the carer, go for gold. So they're sick. Yes, that's your opportunity. You tuck them in bed and you make them lemon honey, and you sit there and you stroke their forehead and you lay cool cloths over their forehead and you get them Panadol crushed in honey, and you just lay it on thick and get them to completely depend on you while they're down. They've stubbed their toe. You go over the top. You get out the Mickey Mouse Band-Aids, you get out whatever it is, and you make sure you have bathed that poor toe and you've bandaged it, and then every few minutes you go, how's that toe feeling? It looked so painful, and just like lather it on, and this child will probably suck it all up because they're so used to being the alpha, the carer, that they're craving this attachment, this attention, and just fake it until it's real. Like, fake it till you make it. Like Adrian says that. She said she just lathered it on her alpha child and she just put on an act.
Yeah. And it really worked.
Yeah, and it totally worked.
Yeah, it's important because like our children are not yet ready to be the alpha leader in life. They're going to be, because we're preparing them for that. We're preparing them for the time when they're going to, because we as parents have got a long view of their development, and we're preparing them for that time, but they're not there yet. And so, if they take it on too soon, they don't have all the maturity for that alpha position just yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I notice it. If I realise that Josiah is renegotiating everything I say, that he's calling the shots, I realise that it's because I'm not being the alpha. It's probably because I'm preoccupied with something else in my head or my emotions, and I'm just not quite with it. I'm not there fully. And I see that because that now no one's an alpha, so he steps in. Yeah.
So we've covered a lot tonight, and it's been really, really good. So thank you very much for that. We've covered what it looks like to be attached, or for your child to be attached to you. We've looked at strategies for attaching. We've looked at the stages of attachment. It's been really good, and now just now looking at what happens if your child is an alpha child who wants to run and organise everything. All those are vitally important. Yeah. Things for us to actually be aware of as parents. And I know, when we were parenting, we had no idea about most of this. But it's good to be able to, it's been good for us even just to hear that, and to be able to, with older children even, to be able to put some of that into practice. It's been fantastic.
So,
thank you so much.
Yeah, collecting and bridging, and that's kind of like the bookends, and everything else you do is relationship building stuff. So spending time with your child, chatting to them, asking them what didn't work for you today, or what worked really well for you today. I noticed you felt a bit, unsettled during X, Y, or Z. All of that, playing games with them, going on walks with them, doing things, entering into their world, is all between collecting and bridging.
Yeah.
So for Josiah, like I mentioned last week, in that first year of homeschooling, we just really did home. We didn't do any schooling. I played hours of Monopoly, hours and hours of it with Josiah. I also got into Minecraft. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of you going, what? Laughing at me. Actually really enjoy it now. But this was something he really enjoyed, and I just felt like this ogre saying, you've got to get off, and there's your timer gone, and if you're not going to get off, you lose it for the next day. I suddenly went, you know what, I'm going to see what is so good about this, and I'm going to validate him. My goodness, his face when I said to him, all right, give me an iPad, get me that book of Minecraft you've got. Okay, Josiah, sit here, teach me how to play. He just blossomed. It was like, I was interested in something he was passionate about. And he just was so cool. My mum plays Minecraft with me. Whoa. And then I just got hooked, because you can put in all the windows and you don't like them, so you can just smash them all and put in pink ones. Whoa.
No.
My mum spent all of Saturday morning on Minecraft. Whoa, he's telling the whole neighborhood. It's trying to create that sameness and validating them and their interests. All of that happens between collecting and bridging any separations and dividing. So
and that's and I guess what we're doing is we're trying to, we as a parents, we're trying to create the environment where that relationship can grow. It's not something that we can easily directly fix. It's not a building that we can construct. It's a plant that we need to allow to grow, nurture and care for. And what we can do is we can care for the environment that will allow the attachment to naturally grow.
Put in the good soil.
Put in the good soil and all those things. Do those, work on those the collecting and the bridging and
allowing for frustration.
Allowing for all those things.
No hurt, no blame.
And particularly removing blame and shame and hurt from our interactions, and creating that environment for the attachment to grow, because we're wanting to draw the children, our children out from just being interested in their childish things, to learn from us, to take on our values, to take on our thoughts, to discover what we think is important. To discover like a whole new world that we know about, but they don't, and so that we can share that with them. But to be able to do that, we need to make it safe for them. And if it's not, then we need to spend a bit of time with them in order for them to come out with us.
So another the alpha thing was also, Gordon's big on you as the parent, or us as the parents, being our child's answer, being the solution to all their problems. So they come to you and say, I'm struggling with my math, I'm struggling with my homework, I'm struggling with this child at school, I've been offered drugs and actually I'm struggling now with that, I'm struggling with cutting myself, I'm struggling with, whatever, on the full spectrum. When they disclose that to us, we don't ever say, I don't know how to deal with that, I can't cope with that, oh my goodness, don't tell me you're thinking about committing suicide, I can't handle that. You comfort and you go, I will find a solution, we will work this through, we can do this, thank you for sharing it with me, let's deal with it, let's do it. The math homework, you can go, darling, let's sit down together and do that right now together, I can help with that. The cutting, you may
try and give yourself a bit of space,
give yourself some time,
comfort.
Once they're then gone, then you get on the internet and you find out the answer, you contact the specialist, you are the providing the solution. you know. And I'm just starting to be really aware about that with Juliet's skin, because I really actually have no idea what to do. But I'm trying to say to her, right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do X, Y, or Z. And we do that in that order, rather than what do you think's caused this flare up? I'm in. So yeah, that's also about being alpha, and also about the safe place for their problems, that you're not going to say to their problem or their frustration, I don't know how to handle this, I don't know how to handle you, I can't cope with you, you know. Our relationship, you want to say our relationship is strong enough and big enough to cope with anything.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And I think each of us can take something away tonight. And for me, one of those things that's going to be happening in my family is I'm going to be, well, and I've actually been practicing over the week, is collecting, you know, the eyes, the nod and the smile.
Yep.
So I'm trying to work on that.
That's right.
So, you know, and you know, I think it's, well, hopefully it's making an impact. And I think there's was a verse you suggested earlier, actually, Andrew, while we were talking before this. You said first, Romans chapter 13, verses 9 and 10 says this: and whatever other commandment there may be are summed up in this one rule: love your neighbour as yourself. Love does no harm to its neighbour. Therefore, love is the fulfilment of the law. I think that's a really great verse to finish on, because really that's what we've been talking about. We've been calling it attachment, but really what it is love. And love is the fulfilment of the law. Love is what takes us away from the discipline that we were sort of hinting at last week, that where most of us automatically go. And it says, right, we're going to love you through this, and grow a beautiful child of God without that stony heart. Take away the stony heart and give them a heart of flesh, that they would obey God and keep His commands. So, yeah, thank you so much.
That's a great. Sorry, I can just say one thing, because that is a great quote, and we haven't really talked about incidents or discipline. We haven't talked about any of that, and we're not going to, particularly now. But that's such a good quote, because it reminds us that, you know, the law, you know, the rules and values and law, they're important, but just focusing on the things at the edge and the boundaries, and that is,
or on the tree,
you know, is not where things are at. Things are at about developing the attachment, the relationship, the love at the heart, and that's what we want to do with, like you said in that quote. That's what we want to focus on with God, and if we do that, then largely the things that those boundary things about the, you know, the law of Christ, and they take care of themselves if we focus on that.
Totally. Like I seriously have difficulty thinking of a time now where I have to do more than ask Josiah twice to do something. Like, just repeating my instruction is enough. Like I said, you know, what did you want us to do? Oh, you wanted us to be doing our handwriting. Like, he's like, we've come such a long way, and I know we've still got a long way to go, but you know, the discipline, the punishment stuff is all so few and far between now, because he wants to do what will please us.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So isn't this so a picture of our relationship with God, or what it should be, what we should be aiming for, and what it could be if we work towards that end?
Yeah.
So for families out there who are struggling with kids who are punching you, ripping your clothing, slamming doors, breaking windows, swearing at you, whatever it might be, talking suicide, you can get out of it. At the moment, it feels overwhelming, and even when you start to think about how much work you've got to do to build a relationship, it feels like you're never going to satiate that child. I was there 3 years ago. I just thought I would never give this child enough love or attachment or anything to satiate him, and now I've realized he's satiated. It does work. You can, you know, it can work. Like, I totally know the black space you're in. This kid, you just, but you can.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you found the episode helpful. Don't forget, most of these episodes are also available as videos on our video channel, cdvideo.org. So head over and take a look. If you have any comments or questions or suggestions, please get in touch or leave us a voice message. We love to hear your feedback. You can email us at btf@cdvideo.org. If you enjoyed the episode, then please share it with others. Until next time, may God bless you in your studies and your walk towards God's kingdom. Amen.